Today we're going to be talking about all of my favorite glass storage hacks for in the pantry that will actually save you money, not just make the items look pretty on the shelves. This video is part of a playlist for the Get Organized 𝐋𝐄𝐓'𝐒 Virtual Summit that I'm a part of. Last year I was part of the conference and I was talking about all my best refrigerator hacks. If you don't know me, I am Amy Cross from the Cross Legacy, Strawberries in a Jar. You might have seen it all over the internet. That was me teaching the instructions how to keep berries fresh for weeks. But today we're going to be talking about pantry items. And then if you check out the link in the description, you can get access to my freezer video that will be part of this year's conference. I'm going to start this lesson or class, however you want to describe it, as a very basic lesson if you are just brand new to glass storage and why I use it. So if you're using items in your pantry that are plastic, they are porous and they're going to let air into the containers. So we always see those beautiful Instagram-ish pantries that are all in plastic. While they're beautiful, they're not going to preserve your food for longer. And that is what I am all about, is saving money on groceries. So I'm going to talk about my two favorite size jars here that you can start out with really inexpensively. And then I have some other jars we'll go through, but just the very basics of these things are, this is a quart size jar, and I normally buy the wide mouth lids. So you have wide mouth, and this is a regular mouth lid. So you can see how one is a little bit smaller. It's more versatile to have the wide mouth lids. So if I'm buying new cases of them, I just get wide mouths now. And then this is a ½ gallon size of the same jar. So these are ball canning jars for both of them. You can get these by the case at stores like Walmart or Target, or your local hardware store like True Value, not the big box stores, but like a local hardware store normally have the canning items too. And these come in the case. And normally you can get them for around $13 or $14 per case. The ½ gallon jars come in a case of 6 and the quart jars come in a case of 12. So you can go really easily for $25 and get a whole bunch of jars that you can fill up your pantry with. This size jar is a gallon size jar. This jar will hold a whole container of grapes. And so I have that normally in my refrigerator for grapes, or if I'm doing other like large strawberries, I'll put them in this size jar. So I normally use it in the refrigerator with a plastic lid, and then in the pantry, I use it with a metal lid. But I like the gallon size jar for pantry items that we use a lot because this jar will hold a whole 1 cup measuring cup in and out. So it's easy to scoop out the items that you want to. This is called a 1.5 pints, which is one of my favorite jars, and they're really, really hard to find. So I don't want to talk about them too much because they're so hard to find. But if you ever see 1.5 pints on a shelf, grab them. But these are the size jars that I use for any of our cracker storage, which is just perfect. It holds saltines or the round crackers, just perfect. We also use these as our drinking glasses for smoothies. So with the jars come a lid and a ring. And these two pieces are what make up the lid for the canning jar. So you might hear sometimes that you're not supposed to reuse lids. Today we're just talking about like pantry items that are dry goods that you don't need to can. This is just putting items into glass storage. If you were canning items, you would use a special process, and that is for like fresh produce, and that's where you can see the items up on my shelf. So some of those items are water bath canned or pressure canned, and those lids you can only use 1 time for canning. So that's not what we're talking about today. If you want to learn more about canning, we have videos for that on YouTube. But this is just regular pantry items. For these items, you can reuse the lids as many times as you want. I have ones here that are like 10 years old. I do put these in the dishwasher all the time. When I put them in the dishwasher, I set them up by the cups. And then for the rings, I always make sure I don't let them soak in water for a long time. And when I put them in the dishwasher, I will make sure that they are the correct way, not upside down, or they will collect water in here and they will rust. So if you ever need to replace your lids or your rings, you can buy these separately, but they will come with the jars when you first buy them and they can last for years. Okay, for any of these things, you can reuse glass jars that you get from the grocery store. So when I first started storing things in glass, it was always spaghetti sauce in the jars, or the larger jars I used pickle jars. So it was less expensive for me to go and get those items and use them for my family and then save the jars. They don't have to be bought by the case. You can reuse jars that you already have. I would just make sure that they have a metal lid for the longest storage for most items. So the one thing that I would consider having a plastic lid is if you're storing strawberries in the refrigerator. This is a 1/2 gallon with a plastic lid. This is a ball canning lid that you can buy these in a package of them too. So these I normally only use in the refrigerator for berries. The plastic lid does let a little bit of the air escape out of the jar, and that way you have less condensation in the jar. And then also sometimes when you're buying gallon-sized jars, if you're getting them off of Amazon, which we have a link, you have a choice to do a plastic lid or a metal lid on the jars. When you're filling up the items into the jar and you have a little bit extra, like that's always a little bit annoying. And so I find that I will put the little bit extra into a smaller jar and then put that in the shelf in front of the item, and I know I'm going to use up the smaller jar of whatever is left first. This also is a wide mouth. This is a pint-sized jar, but it's wide mouth, so all of these lids are interchangeable for the size jar. Something I would never do again when I'm doing my pantry is to spend the time doing perfect little labels on everything. So I find that I end up having strawberries in jars that say like smoked almonds all the time. But these labels, they were really pretty the first time I put them in the pantry, and then I randomly have the right thing that I want to put in that same size jar again. What I find best is to just use a Sharpie on the glass. So here I wrote the instructions on how to cook the brown rice. In case I need the recipe for it, it's right here. And everybody in my family knows how to make it. I don't need to make it all the time. And then you can also write on the lid. When I fill up the jar, I write the date on the item so I know how long it's been in there. So I write it on the lid or on the glass in Sharpie instead of using the labels, and it makes me much happier not having jars that are empty on my shelf that have weird labels on there. So save yourself some time and just get yourself a Sharpie. This little funnel is super handy. You don't have to have one, but it makes filling up the jars so much easier and you don't have spills all over your counters. So I would highly suggest investing in a funnel if you don't have one. These fit perfectly in the wide mouth jars. So we will link that below too if you're looking for one, but they do. I use them all the time. They do help you not make a mess. So if you don't know, regular rice, like white rice, has an almost indefinite shelf life. So you can keep that on your shelves if it's not getting a temperature difference with moisture in it. That will stay fresh for at least 30 years on your shelf. But I'm diabetic, so we eat mostly brown rice, and brown rice has more oils in it and it will only stay fresh for about 18 months before it can start going rancid. But if you put it in the glass jars with the metal lid, it does not need to be vacuum sealed. This will stay fresh for about 3 years, so it doubles your shelf life on it, so you can buy things that are on sale and make sure that you have some food security in your house for something as simple as rice. Okay, coffee is another one that has oils in it, so this can spoil quicker. But we like to have enough coffee on hand that we never have to worry about running out, especially since we only go to the grocery store about once every 3 to 4 weeks. We will make sure that we have enough coffee at the house, but we only like a certain organic one and they don't always have it at the store. So I'm kind of planning for a couple months in advance when I'm getting coffee. So when I open up the jars, this bag I'm going to show you in a second will fill up 2 half-gallon jars or 1 large gallon jar. And that's for this like organic bag of coffee from Costco. So these will fill up these containers, but that way this coffee will actually stay fresh for an entire year. If you happen to find coffee on sale and want to stock up, you can do it that way. Another item that we go through a lot, and I like to buy in bigger quantities, is nuts. So these are cashews, which again have oils in them, and if you store them in a jar, they're going to last about 3 years in the jar. These are actually from 2022 is when I put them in the jar. Along with cashews, one of our favorite snacks in the evenings is eating pistachio nuts. So as soon as I open this up, it will go into a jar. We always make sure that we have these in jars and ready to go so we can have them at any time. So I live in the Pacific Northwest and we can have a lot of dampness in the air. So pasta is one of those items that doesn't necessarily need to go into glass storage, but I like it to go into glass storage so it does last longer. But if you're in the South or somewhere that deals with pantry moths, which we don't have here, putting items in glass storage will stop the spread of any pantry moths that you might have. If you put your items into glass and do find that you do have an issue with one of the jars that you might have pantry moths in, you can just get rid of those items and you don't have to worry about all your other items in your pantry. So our kitchen is brand new, and I had dreamed about having a brand new kitchen in this house for 20 years. And one of those items that I really thought about when we were designing this kitchen was to have some drawers as much as possible in the house. So one of them is a spice drawer and the other one is for my smoothie items. So this one here is peanut butter powder, and this fits straight down in my drawer, and it's really easy to pull it out and make a smoothie near the blender. But I love being able to put smoothie things in jars, and those will actually help them stay fresh longer also. But you don't have all these random plastic containers in the cabinet either, and so you'll be able to fit more items into your cabinet. Okay, another item that I use for glass storage is I put cereal in it. So this is actually granola, but the cereal will stay fresh for like a year after it's open. So it's a really great thing to be able to stock up on cereal when it's on sale and to be able to put it in glass jars. I always keep Rice Krispies also in the pantry, and normally in the summertime we're making s'mores a lot. And when we have extra marshmallows, I'll put those in a glass jar and they will also stay fresh for a really long time. We can make Rice Krispie treats whenever we want to. But if you are trying to get your family members to be able to scoop out the cereal, the larger gallon-sized jars are better to have people be able to scoop out of the jars. So when we're talking about getting items like cereal and snacks out of the jars, a lot of people say that they're worried about their kids breaking the jars. I have to say that I have used jars for 27 years in our house, and I have never ever broken a glass jar before, even with them getting knocked on our countertop or dropped on the floor. They're a lot more durable than you might think. So we have just had really good luck with not breaking any jars, and I would encourage you to try and see how they work in your household. So I keep other items like flour and sugar and stuff in jars. We are an allergy family, so I'm always really concerned about what the ingredients are in items. And so I try to buy in bulk as much as I can, and being able to keep the items fresh longer saves us a lot of money. And doing that, we do things like our baking items. These are the low sugar chocolate chips that I get, and so they're really special to me, but I don't want to eat them all, quickly. And if I keep them in the glass jar with the metal lid, they do stay fresher longer and they don't turn white. So you might notice when you get into a bag of chocolate chips that you left too long in your cabinet that they have started to turn white. These will actually stay fresh for a year or two if you're making sure that your pantry isn't 100 degrees. So if they get too hot, they can melt, but they won't turn white because of the air. And another thing that I keep as far as like baking items, this is brown sugar. So this is still like really loose in the jar. This is from Christmas time. We're filming this in the summertime. So it's about 9 months old right now. If it was left in the package, it would be rock hard by now. So you can see storing things in glass does end up saving you money because you're not having to replace the items as quickly. Okay, let's talk about spices now. So I have a drawer in my kitchen that has all of my spices that I use all of the time. And there are a few that I like to buy in bulk, and I like the organic ones that I use all the time. I have those listed as my favorites in my Amazon storefront, which is linked in the description if you would like a lower price on those. But I will buy them in large bags and put them into the glass jars. These will actually last 5 to 10 years staying fresh in a glass jar like this with the canning lid. So I do have glass jars with just a little metal lid in my spice drawer. Those will only stay fresh for about 2 years in the spice drawer, where these will stay fresh for 10 years. And they will stay, this is parsley, they'll stay like the bright, vibrant colors of fresh spices also. This is my only jar that I have here that's the regular mouth jar. Since I'm holding this, I'm just going to quickly give you a preview of something I'm talking about in the Get Organized HQ Virtual Summit. So in the freezer video, I teach you how to safely freeze items like bone stock in freezer jars and which jars are the safest to freeze that you don't have any breakage. So make sure that you're checking out the link to get your free tickets to go to the virtual conference. Another item I like to keep on my shelves are dehydrated items. You can dehydrate items yourself using a dehydrator or some items you can do in the oven. But these, you can hear how crunchy they are. These are from last fall, so they're almost a year old at this point, and they're still really crunchy in the jar. So it's another thing that you can keep that's more shelf stable. We have a funny story here with our team. I dehydrate mushrooms and put them in the pantry and they stay fresh. And one of my team members didn't realize that it was dehydrated mushrooms I kept in the pantry, and she put her fresh mushrooms in the pantry and didn't know why they didn't stay fresh longer. So if you're looking for fresh produce tips, make sure you check out last year's video, which we will link in the description, that gives you all of my best produce tips. If you're not making your own dehydrated fruit, if you're buying like the large cans, these are called a number 10 can, but these large cans, once you open them up, they will start to rehydrate. They'll start to get soft over time. So if you want them to stay fresh longer and still use them, not keep them for long-term storage, if you transfer these into glass jars with the metal lid, they will stay fresh for years for you. I hope you enjoyed learning about glass storage as one of my favorite home hacks. And make sure that you get your tickets for the conference, which is linked in the description, and follow me on all the Cross Legacy platforms.